You are listening to the Billy Dees podcast.
We are waiting just a minute for everyone to engage the live stream. Remember, you can find the Billy Dees podcast on your favorite platform.
All right, everyone, welcome to the live stream. So glad you are here. Now, last week, we had an issue with the live stream. The podcast, of course, recorded fine. We had it on the all the major platforms. We did have an issue with the live stream last week. Hopefully that has been corrected, and we're about to begin our podcast. As always, I wait just a moment for everyone to refresh their browser, refresh their app, whatever it is they have to do. We're about a minute and a half in with the intro, so I believe that is good enough, and we're going to go ahead and start the podcast right now. All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the program. If you are new here, we are primarily an interview and a commentary-based podcast. My name is Billy Dees. On Friday nights, we try to go live. We have studio productions that are out quite often. A great interview with Christy Mickelson. Great interview with Bill Thompson. All in our playlist. Anywhere you find us, you can find our playlist. And those two studio interviews are available. We do go live on Friday, as I mentioned. It's commentary and it's just having a little fun with the news. Sometimes, in this day and age, it's real easy to get pegged as right or left, and then somebody has to put you on the scale. You're kind of left of center, right of center. They put you on. I try not to be on the scale at all. Okay, I try to examine individual issues, not from the right or the left, but from 360 degrees. Okay. And depending on your leanings, you might say, well, you're right, you're left, you're this or that. But, that's what I try to do is give a perspective that you don't get elsewhere, whether it be on cable news or the other podcasts or whatever. That's kind of our niche. I try to go into a direction that a lot of people just don't go or maybe don't consider. And hopefully that brings you some entertainment. It brings you some value. But anyway, in a nutshell, that is our podcast. We're going to talk about Stephen Colbert and his show getting canceled. We're going to talk about, obviously, the Epstein thing and a number of other things, including NPR. We touch on media quite often here, and there is a very big, rapidly changing media landscape within the last, I'm going to say 18 months, that recent. Podcasts, for example, played a huge role in the last election. You might argue for better or for worse. Things like Substack, all those have really grown in popularity. And quite frankly, it's going to be because of a lot of the things we're touching on today's program, the biases, the other things, the one-sided views, and the bubbles that everybody's in, trying to cater to a particular audience. I don't know that serves everybody well. I really don't, but we're going to get into some of this. Let's start. I'm just going to mention, I haven't had a chance to thoroughly investigate this story yet, but as we go live, this is 8:04 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Friday, July 18th. As we're going live, there's some news. Tulsi Gabbard in particular has some information about how a former administration handled the Russia hoax, or as Trump says, the Russia hoax. And we're going to see how this plays out, and we might feature it coming up, within the next week or so. But as it stands right now, that's just breaking. I haven't had a chance to thoroughly get into it. Right now, here again, as we're going live, the big issue is this letter. Okay. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to let Cuomo, our good friend Cuomo, talk about this. This is a letter that supposedly Donald Trump wrote to Jeffrey Epstein. And this was a long time ago. This was like 2003 or something. And I caught this from Cuomo, Chris Cuomo, and I felt it was a good clip. So let's check this out first.
This Wall Street Journal piece is a hack job, okay? The Epstein story is about abusing kids who didn't have the power or agency to do anything about it, that rich and powerful people may have known it was going on and they got away with it. That's the story, okay? It's not that Trump liked a scumbag, okay? Now, I get that in the media this is great because it's bad for Trump and he's going crazy and he's going to pump and move the story for the Wall Street Journal right now by saying it's fake and it's wrong. But it doesn't move the needle in the country. It's going to make you some money, Rupert. Great for you, just what you need. But this is why we can't get anywhere. The guy says, I didn't write the letter. The letter is meaningless. You put out the piece anyway, and there's no light on what really matters.
That is exactly right, and that's why we can't get anywhere. But here again, I'm going to put some of the blame on the audiences, and I don't necessarily mean the audiences of shows, but I mean the voting public. This is the kind of bullshit that we pay attention to. And the answer is very simple. He says, why why do this? It's meaningless. It is because it's going to stir up a certain fraction of the public that are going to hop on this thing about how, and I want to be very clear, like I just said at the beginning, I'm not necessarily a pro-Trump person. If you followed the show last year, that's when we had last year's when we had the big episode when I criticized from a marketing standpoint why the Democrats were on their way to lose. And it was not partisan. And that's the episode that blew up last year. That's what got me criticized by a lot of the left-wing media. And here again, I wasn't being partisan. I was breaking down why they were going to lose. Okay. But everybody is on a team now. Okay. And I waited almost about a month before the election, before I revealed who I was going to vote for. And quite frankly, I did it without a lot of enthusiasm. The fact of the matter is I leaned towards Trump because the Democrats were off the rails crazy, in my opinion. Okay. And objective analysis by people is becoming very rare. You don't criticize somebody that's in your camp. So what happens is they take some red meat like this letter. And this letter apparently, and here again, I don't know if you can prove one way or another the origin of this letter, but suffice it to say that apparently going back 25 years or whatever, almost 25 years, 22 years, there was apparently a letter in which a drawing of a nude woman was there, and it was very crude. It was very salacious. Here again, we don't need to go into it a lot of detail, but here's what's going to happen. This red meat, this bloody raw red meat is going to get thrown into the piranha infested river. Okay. And all the bubbles are going to start. And what happens is the people that hate Trump are going to magnify their dislike for this. Okay. They are going to chomp it, and just devour it as fast as they can. And the people that love Trump are going to say, this is false. It's a hoax. It's this or that or the other thing. And they're going to hate the left for promoting this. And all it does is entrench people in their positions and give that much more division and dislike, and in some cases, hatred for the other side. And if you are automatically jumping on this story one way or another, if you are automatically saying Trump is a deviant because of this story, or if you are automatically defending him without the facts being known, without being able to verify things, you're part of what I'm talking about here. Okay. And that's what people count on now. Anytime you get into a camp, I am pro this, I am anti this, and it's going to be that way no matter what. And I'm going to support the people that support my position, and to hell with everybody else. The danger of that, and I don't hear this mentioned enough, But the danger of that is you become very easy to manipulate. All they have to do is put in the order for what they want. We want outrage. Okay. And they put the order out and everybody fills the order on demand. And that's part of the problem. So when we turn to the media and say, well, they're feeding these stories, because they get eaten. Okay. And if we were demanding more thorough reporting, if we were demanding more, um, encompassing coverage and 360-degree coverage on things, and if shows that covered the nuances of things got the ratings, that's probably what we would get, at least more of. Now, the manipulation in the media is a whole nother thing. I think that's very deliberate. And it goes with a lot of these big companies now that have agendas of their own that own media. When the founding fathers were talking about a free press, back then they were talking about, a little shack in the small town that had a little printing press. And, we're trying to get the stories out that mattered to that community. They never envisioned these massive corporations that control the narrative for hundreds of millions of people. And we have to be very careful about regulating this. That's not something that I want to get into. I don't want to do that. However, I think we do have to, in so many other industries, we have to be concerned about monopolies. And right now, there's one or two or three companies that just about run the gamut on everything. So with that being said, I'm still going to get back to the audience here. I'm going to get back to the public on here. So many times during the election cycles, I always hear people say, oh, I'm so tired of all these negative ads. All they do is tear down the other guy and blah, blah, blah. The fact of the matter is research is very clear on this. Negative ads work. If sunshine and chirping birds and blue skies made candidates get votes, that's what they would do. But the fact of the matter is, when they get behind somebody in their camp says, we got to go nuclear, okay, we got to go negative, and it works. So we have to be more savvy in terms of how we give these channels, in terms of the media, our attention, give them the ratings. And if you're online, you have to be careful who you give your clicks to. Make people earn your clicks. Make people earn, your very valuable attention. Because if they're just throwing you out, hey, we're on your team, and you go, hey, all right, you are making it too easy for them. Okay, so here again, that's why this letter thing is working. And quite frankly, like Cuomo indicated there, in a lot of cases, Trump is feeding into this. He's giving it more blood in the water for the piranha to go crazy over. He's feeding the piranha by making all these grand statements and the lawsuits and everything else. The other thing I would point out about this letter is, where has it been? Especially when the Democrats were in control, when Biden was in office, and they were going after Trump, with this whole thing with the manipulation of funds of the campaign, that whole thing. Even Cuomo's father said when he was Attorney General, that's a case, had it been anybody else, that would have never made it to the courts. That was political shenanigans. That was paper shuffling. And I'm not in any way saying it's a moral right thing, that that there's nothing wrong with what happened ethically. Should you be doing that kind of stuff when you're married or whatever? Probably not. Okay, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the prosecution of a former president. Something that has never happened before, and it happened over political shenanigans. And if you watch the faces of a lot of these very biased political pundits, if you go back and check out some of those videos, you go back and check out some of the Democrats, they were crazy insane with distemper Okay, like one of those raccoons that's out on your back porch that isn't quite right. If you're making all the faces, that's what they were like with that whole Trump prosecution. They were insane rabid with it. And if they had this letter then, if they had access to all of this information, where was this letter? Was it like just sitting on somebody's mantle? And I'm sure they're going to have some explanation as to where this thing turned up. But here again, you really have to pay attention to timing. Okay. These things, these allegations, these damaging stories always come up at very interesting times. They never come out, it seems like, when the subject of, let's say, Epstein just isn't in the news cycle anymore. It's not there. Okay, it's not driving the 6 o'clock news. It's not why people are coming in to watch the news. It's not why people are hopping on X. You know, they're worried about something else. Then all of a sudden, this letter comes out. That isn't when it comes out. What comes out is the controversy over this Epstein client list. Now, there's a number of possibilities about the Epstein client list and its existence or non-existence. I doubt very much that there was a so-called black book laying around. If you are dealing with very rich and powerful people doing very bad things, you want them to feel safe in what they are doing. And the idea that there's a detailed list laying around somewhere is very unlikely. And if there is, it's probably coded. You know, there's different aliases and different names, things that you really have to have a lot of investigation involved to find out who they connect to. With that being said, I don't think that there's nothing to this story like a lot of the people in the Trump administration are saying. There are some caveats here. For one, there's a good chance that Trump and a lot of other people in this whole investigation, their names are in there. And here again, in this day and age, they could be in there for something very, meaningless in terms of their connection to Epstein. It could be business connections. It could be they flew on their plane. They were involved in some sort of a charity together, etc. And here again, people on the left, they don't care. And I'm saying in a lot of cases on the right too, but in this case, the left, if they find somebody they don't like on that list in the most innocent manner, they are not going to care. They don't care if they destroy someone's life. They are going to jump on it and throw that name into the water where all the piranha are feeding. And it's at the detriment of who's ever innocent and whoever just got caught up in the meat grinder by accident. So that's why these things are often, they have some hesitation going in because you don't want to damage innocent people. And the last thing I'll say too is this about this subject is just the accusation a lot of times is most harmful. You know, there's that old adage about accusing someone of being seen in a field trying to have sex with a horse. Okay, they can come out and vehemently deny it. They can threaten to sue you. They can do all kinds of stuff. And you can say, okay, I take it back. Before the cease and desist letter comes in, and it was a mistake. The person who said that isn't reliable, and we shouldn't have reported it. The damage is already done because you are now in a position of having to deny having sex with a horse. And that is what people remember. It's damaging, especially in this day and age where if you're on somebody's I don't like list, you're going to mark that down on your list of things to hate him for and mention it every single time you can. Okay. And that's why these things come out. It doesn't matter how relevant this letter is. To me, it doesn't even matter if Trump and Epstein had some sort of a weird relationship together as two adults. If it doesn't impact the investigation into the wrongdoing, into the trafficking and everything else, it's irrelevant. But the problem is that people like to connect the dots for people that they don't like, and that's why this letter came out. And I do agree with Chris Cuomo there. The fact of the matter is there's the real issue is the trafficking. The real issue is the harm that was done to innocent people, that was done to underage people. That's the harm. That's the problem. Not a 22, 23-year-old weird letter that we're not even sure came from Trump. But it's just the latest example of red meat that has been thrown into the water, and it is being devoured. Okay. The next thing up here is Stephen Colbert. If you listen to this show with any regularity, you know that that's one of the people I cannot stand. I cannot stand this guy. And boy, there's a lot of things I want to cover here. Here's the issue. Stephen Colbert's show was canceled, late night, whatever it is, with Stephen Colbert. And of course, this is the follow-up to Late Night with David Letterman. Now, David Letterman had his leanings too, but David Letterman would at least punch in both directions, and he had a certain amount of snark. I remember when I'm old enough, I'm of a certain age, and I can remember when Carson retired, and the decision was going to be between Jay Leno and David Letterman. And objectively speaking, I would have to say David Letterman was probably more of an edgy type of individual, and maybe he should have got the job. But in that moment, I agreed, and I still do, that Jay Leno was the better replacement because of the snark. Carson, for the most part, did not have it. I mean, obviously, you use sarcasm in your humor, but he did not have that snark, that looking off to the side. Yeah, well, that little snicker. And I'm not sure that, this is 1992. The audience for 30 years was very used to a friendly, nice person there. And Johnny Carson always treated, whether it was Academy Award winner or whether it was, a former president or whether it was a potato farmer from the middle of the country, they always received respect. They always were treated with a certain amount of dignity. And I felt that Leno was the better choice. All of the people that I mentioned here, Carson, Leno, Letterman. And at the time, there was few people that made a little bit of a dent in Carson, not by much. Arsenio was one. And of course, actually, when Nightline first came on, Nightline was a news program to the hostage crisis in 1979, 1980. That's when Nightline kind of rose to prominence. And as time went on, it became a featured show. And those things kind of made a dent in Carson, but not by much. Carson ruled the time that he was on and always treated people with respect. All of those people that I just mentioned are head and shoulders above any of those three that are on now. And what's really bad about these three is they turned late night TV into something ugly. And I am surprised that Stephen Colbert stayed on the show as long as he did. The ratings are falling. The show does not. These shows are incredibly expensive to produce, these late night shows, and I don't understand why. It's not like they have the best writers in the world. It's not like there's anything technically happening on this show. But there's millions upon millions of dollars that are poured into these shows, and they just don't bring in the revenue like they used to. And a lot of that is the fault of Stephen Colbert and the other two. Okay, I really don't like any of the three major talk show hosts on late night. Now, getting back to Stephen Colbert, There's a lot of people that are upset about the fact that Stephen Colbert is being canceled because they allege it's something that he said about his boss. And here's a very small snippet of that, just so you know what I'm talking about.
Corporation Paramount paid Donald Trump a $16 million settlement over his 60 Minutes lawsuit. As someone who has always been a proud employee of this network, I'm offended. And I don't know if anything will ever repair my trust in this company. But just taking a stab at it, I'd say $16 million would help. Now, I believe this kind of complicated financial settlement with a sitting government official has a technical name in legal circles. It's big fat bribe. Because this all comes as Paramount's owners are trying to get the Trump administration to approve the sale of our network to a new owner, Skydance.
Yeah, what a twit. I'm sorry. That's my personal opinion, of course, but that is a real twit right there. Now, listen to what he just did. He badmouthed his boss. And everybody's so shocked about, his right to speak and all this. Imagine any of us speaking shit about our boss publicly and with such glee, dancing around like a little twit and being shocked that we'd be fired. That, it's shocking when somebody like Stephen Colbert gets fired for doing this. But one of the little peons like the rest of us, a customer walks into the store where we work and we say, our boss is a blah, 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 blah. And then we get fired. And do you think we'd be shocked? The idea that this is shocking to me. But it goes beyond this. Did you notice in that little diatribe there, in that little tweety commentary there, that there was really nothing in terms of comedic material there? These shows have become political commentary shows. They're not entertainment shows anymore. That's one of the major reasons why they can't support themselves. All right. Not the only reason. With the internet now, you have younger people listening to podcasts, which is great. And you have them listening to Substack and doing things on the internet, and they're not staying up late for broadcast TV, especially when it's nothing but horse shit. Okay. And I know you may say, well, these shows have the right, everybody has a right to voice their opinion and celebrities have the right to blah, 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 blah. Okay, here's the real issue. Number one, people turn in. When Carson rolled, at the end of a long day, you didn't want to get charged up. Okay, at the end of a long day, you wanted to listen to an old friend. Have a few laughs. He poked out some genuine fun at the current president, but it was nothing mean-spirited. It was nothing, everything was just fun. And Carson was asked about this by Mike Wallace during a 60 Minutes interview, and he brought up something, and this applies not only to talk show hosts, but it applies to musicians in particular. I think musicians, especially with very young fans, they have a connection. They want to emulate their heroes, their rapping heroes, their guitar heroes, whatever, their musical heroes, people that make them feel good. Okay, when people make you feel good, they can be very influential in your psyche. So if you have a favorite star and your favorite star, somebody you have the poster on the wall and all that as a young person, if they start talking negative about a given president or whatever, you're inclined to follow that. That is very powerful. And Mike Wallace on 60 Minutes, Mike Wallace asked Carson, this was in the late 70s, this was when he was at the height of his power, why he doesn't take on more serious issues. And this is what Carson said.
Do you get sensitive about the fact that people say he'll never take a serious controversy?
Well, I have an answer to that. I said, now, tell me the last time that Jack Benny, Red Skelton, Benny comedian, used his show to do serious issues. That's not what I'm there for. Can't they see that?
But you're not...
Why do they think that just because you have a Tonight Show that you must deal in serious issues? That's a danger. It's a real danger. Once you start that, you start to get that self-important feeling that what you say has great import. And you know, strangely enough, you could use that show as a forum. You could sway people, and I don't think you should as an entertainer.
That is just my point. If Stephen Colbert and Jimmy Kimmel, who's right behind him on people I don't like, they've turned these shows into political commentary. They've turned them into some influential thing. Everything comes from the same angle, and the self-importance. And Jimmy Kimmel will often cry when he's making his points. He's so passionate about all this bullshit. These shows, here again from keeping in mind show business, all right, late night was a fun place. And it has turned into cable news. It has turned into MSNBC. And I would go a step farther and say that the lack of creativity with all of these shows is astounding to me. Absolutely astounding to me as a creative myself. Carson and his predecessor, which a lot of people don't remember. I was too young when Jack Parr was on, but I'm not even sure I was born. But I know who he is, just like Abraham Lincoln was before my time, but I know who he is. He kind of established that format, but Carson took it to a whole nother level. All right. And of course, David Letterman rode that, and so did other people, a few others, where you come out and you do this routine. And now the format is this: you come out and you do this routine, and you throw a couple digs at the president, if it's President Trump, because young hip people who are indoctrinated and are of college age and traditionally was always the fan of these types of shows, they don't like Trump. But the only problem is that those people aren't watching the shows anymore. All right. And the ratings just aren't there. The type of bullshit that you're getting from Stephen Colbert and Jimmy Kimmel, you can get at 8:00 in the evening from Rachel Maddow. And, she just doesn't masquerade as a talk show. And this, you come out there with this routine, this monologue, and you throw a few digs at the president. Then you do this screwball skit that is not funny by any stretch of the imagination. And then you bring some privileged celebrity, who's the son of some rich, famous parents who wrote this book about how terrible their parents were and how they grew up in misery and rich. And this is what the show has become. You have 2 or 3 of those people on plugging their latest book, their latest TV program, whatever, their latest movie. And then you end with a musical act that you probably never heard of. That's the format of Jimmy Kimmel, Stephen Colbert, and The Tonight Show. That's what they all three do. As a matter of fact, they pretty much look the same physically. You could flip through NBC, CBS, and all these others here. Jimmy Kimmel's on ABC, The Tonight Show's on NBC, and the Stephen Colbert Show's on CBS. You could go all through all 3 of these, and they're pretty much indistinguishable. They look the same, and I would be willing to bet they sync up. Donald Trump is orange. Donald Trump this, Donald Trump that. It's the same stuff. And as far as being original, you got to keep in mind, Carson had extreme longevity through many presidents. The political leanings, if you're trying to be an entertainer, the political leanings shift. And they can shift not only every 4 years, they can shift every 2, depending on how influential and what's going on with the midterms. So when you have based your show on being anti-Trump, and that's only going to last so long. And there's nowhere to go when a Democrat gets in there, and all of a sudden you don't have no one to rail against. you're stuck with trying to be creative again. And like I said, these shows are indistinguishable. They could have the same writers for all three and save a lot of money because they do the same stuff. There's nothing innovative about the formats or anything else. I've been saying for a long time, Fox, call me. We could do some great stuff with late night. I envision something like a commentary, fun type thing, and mix in a little bit of Saturday Night Live elements and a live music, and have it run for an hour and a half, and and cover the political gamut, cover current events, make fun of world events, lampoon things. There's so much you could do other than the same old thing. Hey, how's everybody doing tonight? Hey, how's the band doing? Trump is orange. It's the same BS every night. Okay, enough of that. You get my feeling about that. The next thing up is NPR. And you know what? I'm not kidding. I do a lot of voiceovers. I have a lot of software and all this other stuff for voiceovers. And there's actually a setting in some software for the NPR sound. You click on the NPR sound. Today, what we are going to be doing is we are going to be talking about the yellow bird. The yellow bird is, quite frankly, seen in mostly southern regions. And blah, blah, blah. Okay, that is what I envision NPR's purpose was. The original vision of public programming. And, just getting back to what the original purpose of the Tonight Show was, which was lighthearted end of day entertainment. That's what the original Tonight Show was. And that's what Johnny Carson took to the stratosphere. Okay. He made it part of pop culture identity for that era. Okay. NPR, not quite that, but NPR was designed to, in the day and age of ratings-driven news, which is problematic as it is, as I talked about earlier. But in ratings-driven news, the idea behind public and not just ratings-driven news, but ratings-driven entertainment, the idea behind public broadcasting was, we're going to give you something that isn't ratings-driven, but still is important, still that there are things that people want to hear about. So whether it be, animals, stories about animals, and things that would not get big ratings on ABC on Thursday night, things, whether it be concert violinists and the arts, and a different way of looking at public service, and things that are going on, problems that are going on across the country in underserved communities, and not just underserved in the city, but underserved in the country. Places that don't get a lot of attention because you don't have to drive through them on your way to work. Those were the things that public NPR and public broadcasting was supposed to be showing. And that isn't what it became. It became cable news. Our good friend, John Kennedy from the great state of Louisiana. He posted some of these, and I'm aware of them. They're all over. These are some of the stories that NPR talked about. NPR reported that country music and birds are racist, told American people to stop eating beef, and promoted the Russiagate conspiracy. And as I said, there's news breaking on that. NPR claimed that President Biden's presidential debate performance didn't change the election days before he dropped out of the race. And getting back to that, I mentioned that episode that I had last year in 2024. I was saying for a year, this show originally got its traction leading up to the presidential election. And I was saying for a year, and my co-host Cynthia agreed with me during that time, there's no way he's going to run. And everybody came after me like, oh, you're playing into the conspiracy to discredit a sitting president. No, he was not capable. All right. And now there's all these books All these political pundits claim they were duped from CNN, and they write these dumbass books. Yeah, right. President Biden's presidential debate performance didn't change the election. It was just fine. Nothing wrong with it at all. NPR reported that there's no evidence that biological women have NPR reported that there is no evidence that biological men have an unfair advantage over biological women in sports. NPR also called America's interstate highways racist. NPR referred to rural Americans as Christian nationalists. Now, here again, some of you might say some of these statements are correct, and that's fine. But what I'm pointing out is there's nothing here that indicates to me that there's some purpose that NPR is fulfilling. All of these kind of things you can find on cable news. You can find all these things on cable news. There is no reason at all that public funds, that taxpayer money, and we're talking about millions upon millions upon millions of dollars. There is absolutely no reason for public funds to go into this. This was the commentary from NPR.
Hi, I'm Catherine Marr, CEO of NPR. Congress just voted to eliminate all federal funding for public media. This decision hurts communities across America. It means fewer local reporters covering town councils and state championships. It means fewer stories about local farms, fisheries, businesses, about what's happening in the State House, about musicians and civic leaders who make our communities tick. It means fewer voices reflecting the richness of who we are as a nation.
Yes, and you could tell she's so sincere because she says, "Hi, I'm Mar from NPR." Originally when you listen to that, that's what NPR was intended to do, but not report on all this bullshit over here. NPR was intended to serve an audience that is not served by mass media. And that does not mean promoting left-wing ideals. It means bringing up topics, bringing up concerns, bringing up stories that it is simply not possible to get a large, wide audience on paid advertising or paid TV that would support it. That's the whole thing with public entities is to serve an area that is not served by for-profit, large, ratings-driven entities. That is what national broadcasting, public broadcasting was for. And instead, it has turned into a radio version of MSNBC, where we're going to talk about the evil and vile Donald Trump. That is what NPR has become. And as far as I'm concerned, if you disagree with me, if you think NPR is a great thing, then give your money to them, because that is what she's asking for. So if this NPR is so vital and is so wanted and so desired, then they shouldn't have any problem either selling advertising or asking for donations to support their wonderful and interesting NPR material. It is just absolutely enchanting to hear this type of programming. And this programming is made possible by people like you. Yes, it most certainly is. Have at it. Have a great day. All right. Billy Dees, you can find the Billy Dees podcast anywhere podcasts are found. We have a 10-year history on all the major platforms. So on any platform you go to and search out the Billy Dees podcast, boom, we are there. Okay. And there's no paywalls. You can subscribe. We don't do paywalls. All right. For our listeners listen for free. So if you subscribe to the Billy Dees podcast on any of these platforms, there's no, to get this, you got to do that. And we do the same thing on social media. I know there's a big move now. All these creators say, you got to sell subscriptions. And If you want to listen to the Billy Dees podcast on any major podcast platform, it is absolutely 100% free, and it will stay that way. There are no paywalls. And if you follow us on X, which is the former Twitter, at Billy Dees, that's kind of like my social media home. For trending topics, breaking news, things like that, X is still kind of one of the strongest places to be. We don't sell subscriptions there. Okay. You follow us, anything we're putting out, any of the spaces we do, whatever else is 100% paywall free. We don't do too much on Facebook. Our Facebook page is really small, but we do have more detailed information there. Maybe things we're doing in the background to promote the podcast. Sometimes we get some new software, new microphone, something like that. We talk about it. We don't just talk about how great our latest episode is. We try to have some fun on the Facebook page. So very small niche kind of following there, but you're welcome to join and follow us there. The Billy Dees podcasts on Facebook. But I would have to say X is where our primary focus is. So give us a follow on X. All right. I am Billy Dees, and I want to thank you very much for listening to the podcast. And we will talk to you again very, very soon.
Thank you for listening to the Billy Dees podcast. Follow Billy Dees on X at Billy Dees for updates about the program.
Do you listen to music or audiobooks on streaming devices such as Sonos or Amazon speakers? How about on your car sound system? If you use Spotify, Audible, or Amazon Music on any of these systems, you can also listen to the Billy Dees podcast the same way. Billy and his team go the extra mile to make sure our podcasts sound as good or better than anything on the radio. Listening to the Billy Dees podcast has never been easier. You literally just have to ask.